beginning of the show because there's so much information that goes into every one of these No You Tell It shows. And I was thinking about, my place in Queens and where I'm most comfortable. It's certainly not in a room full of people. I'm excited by all the new faces, but I'm also like, but where I'm most comfortable is teaching workshops. I love teaching writing workshops, students of all ages. So I thought I would organize my beginning introduction information into the 5 W's. Does anybody know? Yes, Mary, what are the 5 W's? You raised your hand.
What, where, when, why? What, where, when, and why, and who?
Yes. Yes, the way I organized it was who, what, when, where, and why. So the who, this reminds me to introduce myself. I always forget. I am KJ Fitzsimmons, the creator and producer of No You Tell It. And I also must confess that I'm a little bit of a story stalker. And because for every No You Tell It show, we have a cohort of 4 new storytellers, and I curate them. So some of the people that you're going to meet tonight, I've been story stalking for years. They know who they are. And some are people that came up after the show and introduced themselves to me, are friends with previous storytellers. It's kind of the way that we meet people. I have a lot of secret social anxiety, or maybe not so secret since I just said all the new faces scare the crap out of me. But so come and introduce yourself after the show, and there's plenty of ways that I can tell you to get involved. And you'll meet a lot of people tonight, and if you want to know more about who they are, who the storytellers are, who the creative team are, the artists, all these different peoples that we work with, the program is online. So you might have gotten it in an email today. We have QR codes, very fancy, that Tim made and hung up for us. Or you can just go to knowyoutellit.com, and the program is right there to meet people. So starting with who, going to what. So what, for all of you that are new tonight, the what of No You Tell It is, we gather the 4 people, we give them a theme. Tonight's theme is My Place, and they write a true life tale inspired by that theme. And eventually we workshop it all together as a group with the No You Tell It creative team. Eventually people are paired into story partners, and tonight they're going to flip and perform each other's stories, step into each other's life experiences, identities, cultures. So what started on the page is coming up to the stage tonight. Just flying through it. I love the who, what, when. Tonight also marks our 3rd year partnering with the Greater Astoria Historical Society for these special TV shows. And thanks to Bob Singleton and everyone at the Greater Astoria Historical Society, the storytellers have a chance to engage with Queens history to inspire the true tales that you're going to hear tonight. And this is also our first time teaming up with Queens Memory. And they're also filming the show tonight. So if everyone wants to turn around and wave at the camera, so all the people on YouTube later can see us. So going through to that. So now we're to the when. Now, right? Just to quote Spaceballs, we're at now, right? But if we go back to then, all the stories you're going to hear tonight actually started at the beginning of the month. We had a big workshop at the Queens Public Library, the Broadway branch right up the street. I don't even know where I'm pointing. Like, where am I? That way. And where the 4 storytellers that you're going to meet tonight, along with, it was open to members of the community. We all engaged with Queens history to generate these stories. I built the workshop along with Faye from Queens Memory and Bob from Greater Astoria Historical Society. And there's a link in the program so that you can read all about the workshop and maybe even participate in some of the fun writing prompts that we did. And we also engaged with the Queens Name Explorer to learn the stories behind these shared Queens spaces that we have. So the names that grace our public monuments, parks, streets, and there's a lot of information. Tim, wave your hand. We've got like a fun information corner there. So if you want to sign up to get more info from us, Queens Memory, learn about Queens Name Explorer, it's there. We learned about William Hallett. There was a poetry prompt inspired by these wonderful then and now photos of Hallett's Cove that we have. And our beautiful story coach, Shenda Bao, put this lovely display together. So if you want to take a look at that on your mission. And we're also have this story. Some of you may wonder why I left a tombstone on your seats. So Bob is going to tell us the story behind that after intermission. But before we start, I want to ask Bob, because we did a history hub with Bob at the workshop. And did anyone learn why William Hallett, Hallett's Cove, Hallett's Playground, why there's one T sometimes and two T's other times?
Some were conservative, some were radical, and they didn't want to sit at the same table, and that did it.
Like the family members?
Yeah, there are different family members, and they decided to. In those days, they didn't have like today where you have dictionaries, so you could spell your name any way you wanted to. So if your brother over there decided his name was one T, and he wanted to distinguish him from your family, which had two T's, that was perfectly fine, and that's the way things were. And not like today, where everything's originated. If you have one name, you have the same name. People could spell their name any way they wish.
That is a better answer than I could have ever hoped for. So it was dysfunctional family. Two T's at this table. So the one T's, you're at this table. Two T's, you're at this table. Oh my goodness. We're up to where? I promise, I'm almost done. We're at Grove 34. Thank you so much for this lovely wet venue. Thank you, Derek. If you get things at intermission, tip well. And I also want to invite you, we're also in Queens, right? This lovely borough of Queens, the biggest borough, the most diverse borough. And part of our workshop that we brought in tonight is we have this 6-word My Place in Queens memoir map. So I left the instructions on your seats of the activity that we did at the workshop. So maybe at intermission or before you leave, if you want to add your 6-word memoir to the map, Tim is your man. He has all the things there. And a big hand for Ellen, who's drawing away right here. Who also created the map image in the middle, and we'll have some more artwork for her tonight. I'm really tired of hearing myself talk, so I'm going to save my why, and I am going to call up the first set of storytellers. Well, first I'm going to call up our story coach, Pachenda Rao. As you can tell, it takes a team, it takes a village for every Know You Tell It show, so along with our group story workshops, the storytellers receive individual guidance from Chenda and from Tim, who you'll meet later. And we also like to hear a little bit from the author before their story partner performs their stories. So, Mary, I'm going to welcome you up. We have a little bit of Q&A that I put Chenda in charge of so that I could stop talking. And also, we like to leave the storyteller up because, fun fact, this is the first time they're hearing their story being performed in front of a live audience. As we do have rehearsals, we rehearsed all day yesterday, but the story partners work individually with the story director. So we like to put them in the hot seat so you can experience their story live for the first time. And I'm gonna welcome up Tang and get out of the way so that we can begin.
I'm so excited to hear your story, and you and I go back actually a long time. So I'm really excited to have you be part of the show. And I know that a lot of this particular story and other writing has to do with your family and your family stories. And I know that you were like recording some of your writing down your family stories. And I was just sort of wondering if these stories here, if you've ever differentiated between the interviews that you have with your parents and the stories that you've eavesdropped from childhood, or did you grow up hearing these stories?
Yeah, my mother's side of the family, my mother, my grandmother, and my aunt were great storytellers, and so after dinner on Sundays, they would just sit there and chat, and I would always sit there with them and listen, and so I got some of the stories that way, and my mom started to lose her memory, so I decided to save it with my tape recorder. And it was kind of funny because at first she would get on this storyteller voice, it is 2023, and I was like, oh my god, where are we going with this? But then she would fall back into her usual rhythm. Like, my mother would not call herself a storyteller, by the way. Like, you know, she just did it naturally. She would never think of herself as a storyteller. But I was like, for the grandkids, you know, we're recording for the grandkids. Yeah. So she enjoyed it, I think, quite a lot. Yeah.
Thank you, and we enjoy the stories. I love it. Nice. Get a question here. I don't know. I have no idea what these questions are. Okay. If Kelly Jean had enough money to load everyone here on school buses and take us to a surprise location to have milk and cookies, like Andy Kaufman did after his Carnegie Hall special, where in Queens should we all go? More importantly, what kind of cookies would we have?
I think I would take you all to Forest Park. It's across the street from my co-op, and it's just I hope you've all been there already. But it's such a beautiful place and a peaceful place here in Queens, and you know I think chocolate chip cookies are always a good bet.
Here, here.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, here is My Place for Bo and China, William and Mary, and Me by Mary Lannon, and performed by Wichuda, Tang, McConnell.
My Place, Corbo in China, William and Mary, and me. Right now, my place is in the Hampton Court Co-op in Kew Gardens, Queens. When I moved in, I vaguely understood that the complex had a British name. But recently, I found out that Hampton Court is a British palace where William and Mary, well, Mary, once kept an impressive collection of porcelain, or what we would call china. It turns out that Queen Mary, that oppressor of my Irish ancestors, and I both lived and live in Hampton Court with our china collections. It's enough to make me want to smash the china. Unlike Mary's massive collection in her palace, my china sits in two small cabinets in a corner of my apartment. Those flowery plates, delicate teacups, and light-catching crystal that I have long admired are now linked with Protestant Britain's 900-year occupation of Catholic Ireland. Ireland, land of my ancestors, where all my grandparents grew up. Not to mention an uncle and my brother-in-law. So really, shouldn't I smash the china? Despite all the Irish people around me growing up, I didn't know much about William and Mary's connection to Irish history, or much Irish history at all, really. My parents, children of immigrants, were working class drivers, looking forward, not back. Books about the Kennedy family, that American success story, were plentiful. As for Ireland, I knew there had been a famine and war, that the British were bad, but I was sketchy on the details. Recently, my mother began losing her memory, and I've been recording her family stories. That led me to learn more about the specifics of Irish history, including how in 1689, the Protestant William, aka William of Orange, and Mary, took the crown from Catholic James II. Their accession sparked a rebellion in Ireland that ended with Irish Catholics losing the 1690 Battle of the Boyne. Many Irish rebellions followed, each put down by the British, until the 1919 to 1921 Irish War of Independence, when the Irish finally won. But in the bargain for their own state, the Irish rebels ceded to British control the 6 majority Catholic counties, now known as Northern Ireland. But it is William and Mary's 1690 Battle of the Boyne victory that to this day is celebrated on July 12th by the Protestant Orangemen marching through Catholic areas. In other words, the Protestants celebrate a 300-year-old victory that enabled them to oppress their Catholic neighbors for another 200 years, and that included a famine that killed 1 million people. Wouldn't that make you want to smash some china? Growing up, my grandmother, mother, and aunt held Syracuse china and Waterford crystal in high regard. The delicacy of the bone china teacup represented the height of refinement. At Sunday dinner, my grandmother would set out her china and sometimes her Waterford crystal, and we would feast on roast beef and mashed potatoes. As I ate, I often gazed into the china cabinet. Someday I knew when I get married and had kids, I'd have my own china cabinet with my own elegant dishes displayed. How did my grandmother, who I called Nan, get this taste for china? Born in 1907, she lived with her parents and 3 brothers in a poor neighborhood in Dublin. During the War of Independence and shortly after her mother died, as a girl of 12, she was sent to live with relatives in the countryside because Britain's black and tans, as their soldiers were called, were terrorizing the city. She hated this time because her relatives overworked her, and she was horrified to have to gut and dress animals for dinner. Around 3 years after she returned to Dublin, her father died. No doubt, Nan did not grow up drinking from bone china teacups on the regular. Instead, possibly like me and my dreams of a china cabinet, she got her taste from relatives. Maybe her Aunt Maggie, her mother's sister, who worked as a maid in one of the British aristocracy's big houses. But where did the British in those big houses get the idea? Well, I recently learned from the Monstrous Beauty exhibit at the Metropolitan Museum of Art that they got it from Mary, she of William and Mary, who it was said began collecting china because she could not fulfill her main duty of producing an heir. The upper class women of her time followed suit, and collecting porcelain became a trend, one that clearly had legs. My other grandmother, Grandmother Lannon, also had china, though not her own complete set. Instead, she had fine dishes and teacups given to her by the upper class women she worked for as a cook/maid in Chestnut Hill, a wealthy neighborhood in Philadelphia. Grandmother Lannon died when I was a baby. Her father was a farmer in County Roscommon. And in Philadelphia, she met and married my grandfather, a janitor, 20 years her senior. Grandmother Lannon spent the Irish War years as a messenger for the rebellion, as 13-year-old girls on bicycles were not stopped by the British, so family lore goes. Both of her grandmothers then aspired to the taste of the wealthy, and why not? Why wouldn't they want to set a nice table for their families or have other nice things? When my parents bought their first house, Grandmother Lannon's comment was, "It's nice for a starter house." She also told my father that after graduate school, he'd need a tuxedo to join in the debutante balls. True to her immigrant dreams, she didn't quite understand American class structure and why my father would not need that tux. Neither of my grandmothers understood that China was a relic of colonialism. China was just pretty, or perhaps a way to feel like they arrived, able to give to their families more than they'd had. They certainly didn't know they were following a trend popularized by a British monarch, I imagine Grandmother Lannon, the former messenger in the Irish War of Independence, would have been particularly put out by that knowledge. Nan died in 1994, and I inherited her china. At that time, I was confused about my place in the world. I tried graduate school in philosophy and high school teaching. Neither worked out. Since I had been groomed for success and had mostly succeeded up to that point, I had a tough time. I lived in the Bronx with 2 roommates, getting by with part-time jobs. Having a china cabinet or anything associated with my Irish heritage was the farthest thing from my mind. As one of my cousins put it to his mother, enough of this Irish shit already. So Nan's china landed in a closet at my parents' house. Flash forward 3 years, and no one was more surprised than me that I started to write fiction. So I figured out a bit about my place in the world, but here's a telling story. In my early 30s, I fell in love with a guy who could put all of his belongings in his car. And my first thought was, how cool! I saw myself as living for my art, a starving writer. I'm sure if I could have found a garret, I would have lived in it. I read too much karma, perhaps. Some of this was my personality. I love ideas and was romantic enough to try and live them out. But some of it, I think now, was an extreme reaction to my parents' extreme practicality. If they had a motto, it might have been, who wouldn't weigh every decision in nickels and dimes? They mentioned law school a lot. Having given up on the idea that I might become a doctor, perhaps my father was following the lead of his mother. My dad, after all, became a chemist because his mother always wanted him to be one. Though in the Ireland my grandmother grew up in, chemist meant pharmacist. So she was puzzled when my dad did not work in a drugstore. The push by my grandparents and by my parents for their children to succeed in high status jobs is the story of many immigrants to this country who are often desperate for the material success that was not accessible to them in their home countries. Certainly, my parents also unconsciously feared losing ground. My father especially had known poverty growing up. And here was this daughter with so much promise, given all these advantages, who seemed to want to return to being poor. And for what? For nonsense he could never understand. Like my parents and my grandparents, I insisted on moving on up to a privileged and often moneyed class whose first priority was not practicality. A state of mind not accessible to my mother and father, and frankly, not always access to me either. In the end, the starving writer's life, or at least the starving part, got old. I finally got a JOB, as my friend calls it. The parental relief was palpable, and my mother had bragging rights again. Her daughter, the professor. My mother gave up hosting holidays about 15 years ago, and my sister inherited her china. At first, my sister set up the china, and we feasted on roast beef and mashed potatoes. But pressed for time, after she had her second child and began full-time work as a nurse, she started using paper plates for easy cleanup. My mother's china on display nearby. When my parents moved from childhood home to condo 10 years ago, Nan's china and small china cabinets finally arrived at my place. I have never used the full set though. my one-bedroom apartment in Hampton Court isn't really designed to host my relatives who don't want to travel to Queens for the holidays anyhow. So now, at the end of this story, in which I've contemplated smashing the china, I know I won't. The china is part of the story, after all, and I'm a writer of stories. And what story does the china tell? Part of its story is that, unlike Queen Mary, for me and my sister, the sole purpose of life is not to produce heirs. But I also think my sister would like the leisure time no longer available in modern life to set a nice table for our family. The story is about the life I thought I wanted as a child. One with marriage and children and china cabinets. But despite taking an altogether different route that baffled my practical working class parents and would have baffled my immigrant grandparents, I remain true to them at least in one sense. I won't smash the china because, as they would point out, even if China was popularized by a British monarch, one of many who have oppressed our ancestors for 900 years, you can still eat off the plates and drink from the cups, can't you? And there you have it, one story of my small place in this big world.
Congratulations, that was wonderful. That's done. Now you just get to sit back and relax. I'm so excited to hear your story, and I think that some of the story is around your name, and I know that you work. Do you work with children? Like, do you do direct service with the children?
Yes.
At the early intervention, and I was just wondering if there was ever if the children ever called you something or how they responded to you, because I feel like children can be just so sweet about things that adults have difficulties with.
I don't actually work directly with the children.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but I could totally see that, teach
Yeah.
them. They probably would
Yeah.
wrap their tongues around every syllable
Yeah.
very well.
Yeah. Is there ever is there an English word or an English name that you find really funny that you have a funny time saying?
Oh, that's a good one. all of them.
Right.
I mean, I appreciate, because I'm from a culture that appreciates names. Names are very elaborate for a reason. I wrap my tongue around David, even though they might seem boring. Or Freddie, my husband. Is that also Freddie? I don't get that. There is a family connection, family history
Right.
within that strange,
Right.
that is strange to me, but I respect it.
Okay, I'm gonna ask the cup question. In the My Place in Queens workshop, we engaged with Queens Name Explorer, an interactive digital map that explores the individuals whose names grace public spaces across the borough of Queens. If you could co-name a Queens street after a friend, teacher, athlete, singer, anyone who inspires you, what would it be? I think that's what it would be.
Oh, co-name. I would co-name 48th Street. Does a street? Not
I think it could be a corner.
Okay. 48th Street and 20th Avenue, just right by Paul Ramita, because my kids grow up on that playground and we found now, even the kids found each other again in high school, and the moms are still friends, so and the one mom that always is the constant assistant figure in that corner waiting for me to arrive. His name is Ryan.
Okay. So switching it up, here is Say My Name by Wichuda, Tang, McConnell, and performed by Mary Lannon.
Say my name. So, are you ready? Here I go. Wichuda. Wichaidit. W like Wales. I like Iceland. C like Canada. H like Honduras. U like Uganda. D like Denmark. A like Afghanistan. W like Wales. I like Indonesia. C like Chile. H like Hungary. A like Argentina. I like Italy. D like Dominican Republic. I like India. T like Thailand. Wichuda. Wichaidit. That is how to say my real name, the one my father gave me at birth. Crafting a Thai name is a sacred process. Each letter and vowel needs to be considered individually and altogether to complement a child's birth date, day, time, the zodiac of the birth year, and so on. It is believed that one wrong letter or vowel could hinder the child's good fortune. Many parents even consult a monk or a fortune teller to ensure the perfect name. But my father was a hopeless romantic. There was no checking in with any monk. My first name, pronounced Wichuda, meaning thunder, to harmonize with our family name, Wichaidit. Though he was the son of a humble farmer who raised 11 children in poverty, my father carried himself with the pride of his lineage. He was a descendant of governors and city leaders from southern Thailand, and he could recite the names and ranks of our ancestors as if they were poetry, each one a thread in the tapestry of his identity. Wichuda, Wichaidit would be my official name. Like any Thai, I am also nicknamed Tang, which means melon, to honor my mother's pregnancy craving for watermelon. And my melon-shaped, well, melon. Thunder melon I would be. Some people, including my own sister, whose name rhymes with mine, might change their name when they grow up. But I believe that a name given by one's parents is an auspicious one. I am proud of the legacy my full name carries. Wichuda. Wichaidit. Wichuda, Wichaidit. The summer break before the start of mandatory English in 5th grade, my father forced me to learn my name in English. Again, as meticulous as ever, he carefully picked W, not a V, and CH, not SH, to match the sound of the Thai letters in my name just right. In the swelter of summer, he made me sit still, spelling each letter aloud as I traced them in cursive on paper damp with sweat. Wichuda. Wichaidit. My father was a man lit by ambition, the first in his family to escape the pull of poverty through education. He remembered living at a temple just to attend schools in the city, wading barefoot through muddy rice fields during monsoon season, his only uniform and shoes carefully tucked in his bag to keep them clean, changing into them once he reached the edge of the school grounds. He taught himself English not in classrooms, but from a treasured set of Oxford's English is Fun cassettes and booklets, bought with the slow, careful savings of a teacher's wage. In the stillness of our home, he'd sit before the flickering screen, entranced by Peter O'Toole's Lawrence of Arabia, the undubbed version, the English raw and untouched. He watched it again and again, not just to understand, but to become the voice he heard. He mimicked the syllables like spells, shaping his mouth to match a world far from his own. With every phrase repeated, every word wrestled into memory, he was climbing, reaching, not just for a language, but for a life larger than the one he'd inherited. Before I was born, my father dreamed of distant shores. He applied to study in the Philippines, but failed the interview. The story goes, whispered in the folds of family memory, that he impressed the panel, rose high among the finalists, yet fate, ever sly, placed an old college rival in the interview chair, a man whose grudge had not aged into forgiveness. Maybe it was a single letter, a vowel left unrubbed in his name that tipped the scales. Maybe it was pride, or something softer and more human. But the opportunity slipped through his fingers like tropical rain through a thatched roof. And yet, was it misfortune or mercy in disguise? For the dream denied became the path he walked. In staying, he built a quieter future, one rooted in family, in love, in the life that would one day become mine. After a single brief visit to the U.S. for work, his desire for my mastery of English burned through my childhood like a relentless sun. Each day of my elementary school years began with, "Oxford English is fun," drilled into me with the precision of ritual. My 13th birthday present was a $100 talking dictionary. I had to be able to summarize in English any English language book he'd assign. America, the land of advanced minds. I dream of my daughter in Levi's and Converse speaking perfect English, he told my mom. Though resentful, I continued to appease, feeding the fire he had lit in me, unsure whether I was learning a language or simply learning to surrender. Slowly, his unrelenting enthusiasm and ambition started to penetrate my stubborn melon. Slowly, his dream became mine. I spent a year abroad at an American high school on an exchange program, a year of sharing a bunk bed with my blonde host sister not understanding my English, a year of being informed my cultural conflict would abate once I dreamt in English, a year that led to my return to an American college with a full scholarship. I was told that the day my plane took off to college, my father wept. Perhaps it was pride or a premonition. He made 40-cent a minute international calls often. We chatted about the classes I was taking. 8 a.m. Chinese, I like it, but it's so hard. The teacher said I needed to work on distinguishing ch from sh, but I cannot hear the difference, I whined. Ch is like the choo-choo train. Sh is like a shushing sound I used to make when I put you to sleep, he calmly responded like a wise polyglot. The phone calls ended not long after. My father died in a plane crash. Sorry. Back in Thailand, but I was cramming for finals that semester. Among the papers my mother received after his death was an expensive telephone bill, all to her. I never had a chance to tell my father that in America, my real name, the one he had so carefully crafted, is a challenge for others. The sound of Wichuda alone would wrinkle the fairest of faces, corrupt their constellations of freckles, knot their near transparent shade of blonde eyebrows, widen their green eyes, and tremble their pink lips. Wichita, like in Kansas? Wichunda? Could we just call you Wendy? Or something one person once recommended? It'd be so much easier. I get Wichita. Wichunda is somewhat forgivable. But Wendy? How do you go from Wichuda to Wendy? Tang, you can call me Tang, if that is easier, I caved. But then, just like the astronaut drinks. We have that here too. How cool, even easier, Tang it is. Columbus might have thought he discovered America in 1492, but in 1996, at the age of 16, as an exchange student in America, I discovered that my nickname held a whole other cultural significance in this new land. A chalky, sugar-laden orange powder that symbolized American advancement in both the glorious moon landing era celebrated by mankind, as well as the dawn of ultra-processed food technology that now causes global obesity. But better than Wendy, I thought. Thunder melon, orange powdered astronaut drink I would become. Since then, I would introduce myself as ridiculously as Tang, just like the drink. My many credits from the 8 a.m. Chinese classes landed me a job in Queens, the most linguistically diverse neighborhood in the world, yet I stuck to using Tang as my survival strategy. Performing the art of assimilation, living by the Asian golden rule to never inconvenience others, sliding right into the model minority trap. Except, of course, the occasional spelling of the full name for customer service reps. Then I married a white guy from Montana, surname McConnell, and thought life in America without my original last name would be easier. A calculated move to slice off half my pain and shove it behind a thin veil of whiteness. What would my father think? I never had the chance to tell him that America, his land of advanced minds, could not handle the legacy the name he'd given me. In March 2020, something shifted. I felt the weight of misdirected rage at Asians over the COVID pandemic, fearing its heinous aim at faces like mine, or worse, my children. But the rage and fear clarified some things. The jock in senior English interrupting your presentation just to say he couldn't understand you. The word annoying hurled at you for daring to speak up. The word you had to look up in the talking dictionary. Then you had to cry. The strangers on the street with their lazy greeting, ni hao. Or even once you clarified you are not from China, oh, Taiwan, does it snow there? The husband who mocked you for not knowing David Hasselhoff or his international sensation show Baywatch, as if you were from some backwards forgotten place. The ache of wanting to disappear or file for divorce, maybe both. The protest from your own children who once spoke Thai fluently but now reply only in English. You speak English too, they would argue. Wichita, Wichunda, Wendy. So many ways to be erased. Anglicization, assimilation, ignorance, oblivion, microaggression, explicit aggression, all rhyme with alienation. Since when did the proud legacy of my illustrious last name become a heavy burden? Would my father have met my anger with calm if I told him America's advanced minds built their fragile sense of superiority through racism and capitalism that is built on racism's very back? Would he be proud that my exchange year classmates, likely including the jock in senior English, now praise my perfect English? While I need Google Translate to ensure my Thai is comprehensive to my own mother? Would it surprise him that speaking good enough English cost me far more than any made in Thailand Levi's or Converse ever could? And the name I go by, Tang, is an orange astronaut drink? Say my un-American name, carefully chosen by my exacting father to fit your alphabet. I'll gladly spell it out letter by letter until you get it right. Work through your discomfort to wrap your tongue around the unfamiliar sounds of my letters, inflection of my vowels. squirm to understand my accented, grammatically problematic English. Know that I have worked so hard to learn your language that I sometimes forget mine. Know that where I come from, names are history, meaning, romance, sometimes unchecked ill fortune. Know that my Thai name, whose life and legacy make it mean me, is part of America now. My name is Wichuda Wichuda. Say it with me. Wichuda Wichuda.
Oh, congratulations! More applause for our first ever storytellers here in Lannon, Wichuda, Tang, McConnell. These beautiful stories from the first half of our show were directed by Erika Iverson. We had rehearsals all day yesterday, which suddenly feels very far away. But yeah, that was beautiful. Thank you so much, Erika. And I hope that you were listening, because Erika is also going to come up and do some story trivia for some fun literary prizes. And the prizes for this first half are our very last Know You Tell It 10-year anniversary anthologies. So these are your last chance to get them. Erika, do you need help getting winners?
Yes, you can point for winners.
Okay.
So this is our beautiful book. I think you still can get it on Amazon.
Oh, you can get it, yeah.
But
And
these are our
it's still at the
last
Astoria
copies.
Bookshop, too. These are the last free copies.
Yes.
Very
The last 3 copies. I'm very proud to have 3 essays in this book and to be mentioned in the introduction. And I think it's a beautiful book, so you should be excited. Anyone.
So if you know the answer, raise your hand. I'll try to call on you. Storytellers do not play. How that happened. We have prizes for you at the very end, so you get your own special prizes.
So we started this tradition a while ago where at first we tried to come up with literary questions and they were like, this is silly, let's ask fun questions about the stories we just read. So, starting with our first story. What queen and king, well, queen mostly, are responsible for the popularity of fancy china? William and Mary. Okay, this is a little trickier, it's a small detail. What American success story would Mary's family rather read about instead of Irish history or William and Mary? Did anyone catch it? Oh, the Kennedy. The Kennedy!
Some deep cuts there.
Right? So I think you gotta reward the close listeners with the little funny
Erika's a
details.
tough teacher.
I am. So, okay, and moving on to our second story, what literally does Wichuda Tang mean translated into Thai? Thundermelon! And finally, what W names were suggested by some very helpful people as substitutes for Wichuda? Yes.
Wichita or Wendy?
Wichita or Wendy. Anyone else? There's one more out there. There's one more in there in between Wichita and Wendy. Yes. Wichunda. You got the last one. Thank you all so much.
So a couple quick announcements before we take a 10-minute intermission. The first is, please, if you like, we have pens in the back. You all had on your seats the My Place in Queens 6-word memoirs. And there's instructions and what each of the we have little Post-its that corresponds with the map key here. And Tim will help you add it to the map. So a couple of my favorites that we have right now is A Moment of Excitement, Found Queens from Brooklyn While Walking. Or Words to Live By, Be outside yourself and look around. Yeah, so you're welcome to You can brainstorm on the page, and then if you want to add your 6-word My Place in Queens memoir to the map, either at intermission or before you go, Tim can help you with that. And there's also more information, like I said back there, about the Queens Name Explorer. And it was recently my birthday and Lakshmi's birthday. We're birthday twins. So we're doing some birthday celebrating tonight. And so even if you didn't win, it's one of the story trivia prizes. I have presents for everyone. I'm part of this new print-only literary magazine that launched last week. And so, yeah, free copies for everyone. I have a small little story in here that's illustrated by A.K. McCarty, who did our Hellgate artwork. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here tonight, but please, they're on the chair. This is like the power corner over there. So in the next 10 minutes, memoir, map, Queen's Name Explorer, drinks at the bar, and bathroom in the corner. Have fun.
One of the interesting things about being a historian today is our ability to rediscover our past and who we are. We hear different stories here of people's particular lives and how things have had an impact on them. But you can imagine if you're given the charge of an entire culture, an entire civilization, an entire nation. And today with computers, with the internet, what have you, we as historians find that what we know of our past is really not the entire story. We continuously find things, new things, and it's exciting to be a historian in this particular time piece. And one of the examples of this may be a trivial example, but it's just giving an example of the kind of things which we're going through right now. By the way, next year is the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution and all that stuff, and there's the same things going on with that circuit there. We're going to see some really interesting stories next year when that comes out. But something that happened to us, we're a historian, everybody knows the Historical Society, Long Island City area, and some fellow that we were giving a tour came out to me, and he says, something in my yard, he says, I wanted you to see. Okay, I always hear these stories, interesting, and he showed me something that is embedded in a wall. He says, I cut down to my street level so I had a place to park my car. We had to move a lot of dirt and found this stone. So what I'm going to do right now is to give you the story of the stone that he found, but even more importantly, of a soul that he discovered. I title this The Honors of War because it really sort of outlines a person's life and how war erases their existence and how life's chance recreates them. The small hill in Hellgate, behind the Hallett barn and overlooking the Cove, Hallett's Cove, Reverend Josiah Bloomer, pastor of St. James Episcopal Church, which incidentally is still in Elmhurst today, opened his copy of the Book of Common Prayer. The Liturgy of the Dead was about to begin. The event was noteworthy enough to be mentioned in the New York Gazette, which is copies of that have survived, and that's how I got to put together this story by looking at this information in the Gazette. His name was Lieutenant William Berry, likely a younger son from a minor Irish Protestant gentry. In the tradition of the wild geese, as young Irish soldiers were called, he exchanged slim opportunities at home to become a soldier of fortune. Upon arriving in Britain's rebellious colonies, he saw the grit of war, for he was present during the expedition in Portsmouth, Virginia, and the siege of Charleston in 1780, which was the worst defeat of the American Revolutionary War. Berry seemed to chart his own narrative, whimsically disappearing to reappear a week later without his horse and equipment. His antics caused a court-martial. He was found guilty, facing reprimand. He quit the service. Okay. But a year later, in 1781, the war was in its 6th year. The British knew that stalemate was the road to defeat. Warfare voraciously consumed cash, former enemies eyed opportunities to pluck pieces of the British Empire, and the locals, rebel and loyalist alike, were chafing under the heel of an occupying army that left a growing trail of angry farmers with crops confiscated, merchants with goods pilfered, and fathers with daughters of uncertain virtue. Barry, a newly minted lieutenant of the Royal Foresters, was not taken back out of leniency, but of desperation. His commanding officer had to travel in a final attempt to muster more recruits, leaving in his absence the perfect environment for Barry, who, with a reputation of hijinks and antics, was undoubtedly the most popular fellow in camp. Any of you have been in the military, you know what I'm talking about. There's always a character like Barry, believe me. It must have been a shock then when Barry caught a chill in the early days of autumn and died suddenly. Perhaps at the time that news arrived from the south that the commanding officer, Cornwallis, along with the entire British Army in Virginia, were prisoners of Washington at Yorktown. Within months, they knew that Washington would be back to New York. The war was over. Small knot of men stood in a circle at the Hellgate. Wigs powdered, heads bowed, resplendent in scarlet tunics and gold braid. But it was in their eyes that would catch our attention. The eyes of veterans who could never find words to speak of the bond of brotherhood, of the random horrors and madness of war itself. They were not only burying their friends with the, quote, honors of war, but the dreams of Britain's rule over the 13 colonies. About 20 years ago, a local owner dug down to create a parking space on his property line on 30th Road. He knew about the Historical Society and gave me a call telling me that he found a curious stone which, as a lark, he decided to cement into the retaining wall. He took the soil over to Socrates Park, which was just at that point was being put together, and they gave him permission to sort of spread it around so they could add some soil to the what was basically an industrial area. So when I came across the stone a few years ago, I took one look at it. You know, being a historian, we look at things and can, you know, name certain things. And I said to myself, oh, this is a mortuary monument. Yes, I mean, you all have a copy of it out there. You know, I looked at this thing. And what I did is, again, today we have the internet, we have professionals, we have a network of people, so we can rely upon a huge amount of information, of knowledge, so immediately started to contact various people that I knew that could help me identify what this thing is. And everybody agreed to me. They says, oh, this definitely looks like a monument, you know, like a tombstone or something of that nature. But who's going to pay to have it looked at, to have it researched? You know, we run into these things all the time. You know, our past is being completely reinvented, and yet we have only a tiny fraction of resources to be able to understand what's really going on around us. So again, for being a historian, it's a pretty exciting time, and yet when you look at it from another standpoint, it's a very interesting time. So when you realize that a good portion of our past, of what we know is received wisdom, really may not be received wisdom. So I said, well, maybe there was some paint was on the stone, but you can see from the picture, you know, there was nothing was engraved, nothing was painted or anything like that, and nothing was in the offering.
Thank you so much, Bob. I didn't get to hear that in the original workshop, so it was so lovely to hear the story live, and yeah, and it's such a great way to usher us towards the second set of stories tonight. And so I'm going to welcome up our story coach, Tim Lindner. Tim is also an all-around, you tell it, superstar and our social media guru, so we should give him an extra round of applause for all the things. And we're gonna welcome Ari to the hot seat. Ari Figueroa wrote the first story tonight. And so I will get out of the way so that Francisco can come up and get all set up at the music scene.
I feel like I should have a cup of coffee or
I
something.
know. Hi, Ari.
Hi.
How are you feeling about hearing your story read aloud?
I'll know when it starts.
That was not your question.
Oh, all right.
But so you wear many hats, including this fabulous
Thank
hat.
you so much.
Carney, librarian, drag queen, teacher, impressive resume.
Thank you.
So, and you're also writing a novel, a fantasy humor novel.
Yes.
So what I want to know is how do all these real life experiences end up making themselves into your fiction, or do they, or do you just start from scratch?
Oh, wow. Well, so here's the thing. The novel that I'm working on is actually based on Dungeons and Dragons characters that me and my partner created.
Nice.
And so I think pieces of their personalities probably come from my past that I haven't really gone into and delved into and figured out right now. But at the moment, I haven't really brought my reality into that world so much.
Start from scratch. Build
Yeah.
a new world.
Exactly.
Amazing. All right, you ready for the cut question?
No.
I
Let's do it.
have no idea where this is going. In the My Place in Queens workshop, Chenda gave participants time to study a series of palettes codes then and now photographs, such as the ones on display here tonight. What's something in Queens, a location or otherwise, that you've seen go through a significant change during your time here?
Oh, wow. A lot. There's been a lot of changes. Well, New York is constantly changing, as we know. And it's tough because I don't want to, I talk about so many different locations in my story, so, which you'll hear about. But I guess what I've noticed the most are the small businesses that change, what comes and goes. And it's sad. It's a sad kind of change to see because, those are somebody's dreams. And to see those change into somebody else's dreams and then maybe stay around for a little bit, go away, especially with COVID and everything. That's probably the biggest change that I've seen.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, here is Take a Walk with Me by Ari Figueroa and performed by Francisco Delgado.
Take a walk with me. Take a walk with me. First, down the second floor stairs, covered in aged, torn carpet that looks eerily similar to the shining hallway. But the only ghost here is the long-gone husband of our Greek landlady. We live on the second floor in an apartment that's filled with knickknacks and a million stories. Aria, my fiancée, and I have made it into our home, Ari and Aria's apartment. Someday we'll have a place that's truly ours, one where our only roommate is a chunky cat who loves treats and probably hates Mondays. Down the stairs, and we'll say a quick hello to said landlady, who sits in a plastic chair with her head tilted back, basking in the sun. We call her Yaya, as her grandkids do. She treats us like her own, giving us rewards like a singular banana or one sprig of basil when we help her bring her groceries. She even yells at us like we're her own, most of the time for things we didn't do, and often in Greek, when talking to Aria, forgetting that they're not actually related to one another. Past the white wall of the building next to our front porch that used to have graffiti of a clown, now painted over, but if you squint hard enough, you can just make out the faint blue lines. Walk under the mulberry tree that overhangs the sidewalk from the yard, where the chickadees gossip, and the morning doves remind me to think of my Nana. They were her favorite birds, and she really loved birds. The first one she ever had was a parrot named Paru. Paru adored me. always offering a snack when my Nana would babysit. "Brah, you want an apple?" he'd squawk. And my Nana would often argue back, "We don't have apples today, Peru." He was our only bird for decades. Then, one day, he went on a vet visit, and when another bird spoke to him for the first time ever, Haru died of shock. My Nana later rescued cockatoos, parrots, and even hurt pigeons from her apartment parking lot, including one named Little Joe. She never made them stay in their cages. They had the full range of the apartment, flying from room to room. She never made them stay. I love that they could wander around the record player as it cranked out Patsy Cline or Dolly Parton. Sometimes my Nana would take them on the front porch just to let them be outside. She hated keeping them cooped up. And when little Joe healed enough from his alley cat strike injuries to rejoin the other pigeons, sad as she was to let them go, she let him go. I think, as a domestic violence survivor, she knew the value of freedom. Sometimes my dad and I will call out, "Little Joe," when we see a lone pigeon. Under these branches, Ari and I have deemed it our spot. It's where we share silly thoughts and steal silly kisses. Where we comment on Yaya's yard with its different flowers that bloom at different times. It's our outside place when the leaves shield us from rain and when the berries stain the ground purple-blue. Follow me towards the water. Stop in the Dunkin' where they know me by name. Taste the iced coffees that have had me in a chokehold since I was 13 in Massachusetts, where Duncan and I both were born under different names than we have now. Another story for another walk. Take the path that Ari and I walked when we first became friends, pretending that we weren't falling in love, getting to know one another, talking for hours as we passed the Broadway shopping center. A collection of locations, like the diner where we'll go during COVID to watch outdoor movies and drink boozy milkshakes. That diner would later be on the show Kitchen Nightmares. But it won't close. And the small pet supply shop owned by Tom, where we got our 2 betta fish and performed for the store's anniversaries. Fully made up drag queens with snakes and lizards in our shoulders and one bearded dragon named Vinny, who was determined to burrow in Arya's $300 wig. Tom's would sadly end up closing for good in 2024. Through the sculpture park, where I always find myself on days when I need a walk, the ever-changing artwork with deep, important meaning that little kids hang on and passerbys try to digest with careful thought in the sun. And I sit on the big rock in the middle, failing to hide my weed. Sometimes I forget it's legal. Sometimes I worry that will change. Another casualty in backwards evolution. And also, park rules are weird. Sit with me at the cove, where we buried our 2 betta fish, had little funerals and everything, where the geese make lifelong mates and the seagulls fight for scraps. Now and then, you'll see a swan, so out of place with the others and yet so comfortable to go with grace wherever they please. This cove, where bodies wash up now and then. I guess I always knew it was a peaceful place for death, where the bodies meet the shore. Listen to the families pass, some enjoying the rare perfect weather, some arguing amongst themselves, and the Astoria kids whiz on by on their small plastic scooters, as if they were born knowing how to ride them and where to go, born knowing the neighborhood and their place in it. And it makes me wonder, what was I born knowing? I was born knowing I had to be good, more than an instinct responsibility. My presence in my mother's uterus was the last straw in her mother's eyes. But who can resist a Disney kid with golden curls and a love for animals? So, I became the family mediator. In my mother's 16-year-old arms, I was the glue to put them all back together. Traditions formed and family get-togethers became important. Even if they hated it, it was for the kids. Being the oldest meant I was the example. Little room for mistakes, so I feared them. Part of me still does. There isn't much time to figure out who you truly are when spare minutes could be productive minutes. And taking alone time was being antisocial, even if that meant we all just sat in the living room not talking to one another. So the expectations suffocated me, and disassociation became my best friend. Look at the skyline with me. As the sun dips and makes the sky sherbet, the city lights up and it's all so romantic. I've always been in love with the city. Even when I hated so much, I could scream. But that's largely due to the MTA. I don't think I could ever truly hate this New York, knowing how much it saved me. When you move to a big city, after growing up fairly sheltered, and don't have a college meal plan, you learn to survive quickly. The culture shock and a very honest teacher are what finally pulled me from my foggy Massachusetts mindset. On the first day of class, we were asked to describe ourselves in one word. I chose complicated. My teacher raised her eyebrows and said, "You're not as complicated as you think." That small statement began pulling me out of my own head. Suddenly, I started to really see and experience my life. Let's walk back a different way. Past the streets where I fumbled with keys at complicated doors to walk dogs. A great sunny day job, but also sometimes hypothermia for $20 a walk. I learned the streets of Astoria so much faster rushing from pup to pup than rushing from bus to bus at my previous Bed-Stuy blocks. I moved to Astoria in 2016 to escape an abusive friend. We met in middle school, tried to date in high school, and when I finally finished college, they moved to New York. It was because of them that I fell in love with drag and entered the queer scene. But their constant desire to control me, unending discouragement, and narcissistic behaviors made me finally break the 10-year friendship. I realized I didn't have to live that way. And although it meant giving up my cat and an in-unit washer dryer, I fled to therapy and to Queens. Over there is the bodega where Aria and our friend Andy win sad stuffed animals at the claw machine. And because a part of me will always believe stuffies have souls, I can't bear to throw them away. But they sure are ugly. Let's go further to the bar we've all worked at. Sticky floors, hookup stalls, a safe space where Ari and I first met. The unnecessarily strong cocktails made me forget a lot about that night. But I do remember buying Aria a drink, and their reaction was to tell everyone in the bar that we were dating. A silly joke that ended up being a drunken premonition. To the vintage shop, Love Day 31, where the owner and our good friend, Ivona, is bound to have some stories to tell. We can grab a bottle of rosé, blast disco music, and if we wanted to go further, we could go to my favorite museum where the puppets live. Or stop by a friend's place. Their homes dot Astoria like a beautiful chicken pox, the kind you're excited to get, because it means no school and being doted on. The oatmeal bath is knowing that they're just a walk away. In truth, we could walk for hours. I could tell you everything about my Astoria and everything I've learned just from living here. Memories that fill each avenue, street, and alleyway. New York made me feel at home in myself, but Astoria gave me the freedom to discover who that self was. Real identity, real wants, real love. For me, the heart that formed this home was a community that has only encouraged me to be my true self. Neighbors who we actually know, queer spaces with open arms of like-minded friends, and shops that are run by chosen family. I am by no means done growing or exploring, but when I say I love Astoria, just know that it runs deeper than a souvenir from a local store with the same words. It's beyond being a follow-up phrase to eating something delicious from down the street. It's not just my home, it's where my heart is. Maybe someday I'll find that heart in another neighborhood, but I won't forget what Astoria has given me. And I'll always remember this walk.
Beautiful story, Ari, and beautiful reading, Francisco. Thank you so much.
I got to practice my parrot. So
Very
I was
impressive.
workshopping my parrot with my wife. All that. Not enough, too much.
Amazing, great job. So let's talk a little bit about you. Your novella, I'm Remembering My Friends, My First Job, and My Second Favorite Weezer CD. Great title. Won the 2024 Clay Reynolds Novella Prize. Can you tell everybody a little bit about what the book is about and what you want people to take away when they read it?
Sure. So, very similar to a lot of the beautiful things Aria was writing about in her piece. The book is ultimately about the community we find, the community that we all need. It was partly inspired by my experiences growing up in a predominantly white town in upstate New York, not being white. And it was also inspired by being a parent during the pandemic. My son was turning 5 right as everything went into lockdown mode. So just like feeling that ache for community and not being able to really do anything about it. So those are really like the two currents of the narrative, and throughout the novella, they come together in different ways.
Wow, yeah. Is it out?
It is available for pre-order. Its official release date is June 2nd.
Amazing.
Yes.
Right around the corner.
Yes.
All right. Are you ready for
So
the
it's a
cup?
great way to celebrate AAPI month, just the cup question.
The last one.
I had such good answers for the other 3, so this means this one's gonna stump me.
We got a short one.
Hey, good or bad?
Where is your go-to clean spot when you need inspiration for writing or otherwise?
I am very fortunate, and a few of you know this. I live in Forest Hills, a beautiful neighborhood, similar to Kew Gardens, which is our neighboring neighborhood. So my favorite spot, and it was mentioned already by Mary, to go when I need inspiration, is the Overlook, which is part of Forest Park, and it is part playground, part dog park, and there's like a whole loop where kids are just almost hitting people, whizzing by so fast, and just to kind of sit there, especially in the fall when the trees are changing, it's always very inspirational.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Well, switching it up, here is Ashes and Stars by Francisco Delgado and performed by Ari Figueroa.
Ashes and stars. As they do every April, the trees and flowers have the nerve to bloom. An invitation to families to return outside. The playground suddenly rouses back to life. Children unleash laughter at another summer just ahead. That same laughter, that at various points of the last decade, has been directed at us. My 10-year-old son scooters through the gathered families gathered up with each other, sharing stories of their children's schools and extracurriculars, some of them planning get-togethers for the upcoming weekend. Me, seated on a bench at their periphery, nothing more than their background. To them, my son seems to be playing alone, but that's because they do not know the endless playlist of songs in his head. He's got the entire Beatles anthology locked in. He sings the songs in the orders they're in on the albums. He can even rattle off the albums in the order they were released. There's no way for the other parents to know about all the stories our son has inherited, from me and my wife and our families, from all across the world, from Italy and the Mediterranean to Guam and the Pacific. Voyagers, all of us. These stories have helped us find our way, and now our son is beginning to make these stories his own. He scooters parallel to the LIRR train heading to Manhattan. His momentum nearly creams him into a few toddling children around the sprinklers, to the parents' chagrin, or directly into a few of the parent groups, whose nasty glances reveal the people as they truly are, which is not the people they portray themselves to be in these parenting stories they're telling. But my son, however close he gets, never makes contact. He moves seamlessly through this world, as well as the world in his mind. He moves like ocean currents between them. He stops just short of me. Dad, where's that train going? Is it going to Manhattan? As he speaks, another train passes us, heading in the opposite direction, taking his attention along with it. That train is not going to Manhattan. It's going to Long Island, right, Dad? He's learning all the ways we're connected, and all the ways we can stay separate from each other. I keep him close for as long as I can, at least until the crowd recedes. He's off, and in a way the first chance he gets, his eyes cast somewhere I'm not. I want to tell him about how our ancestors in Guam used the stars to find their way home. But I look up at the sky above Queens and see no stars. I moved to Queens for a girl. Scratch that, too sentimental. I moved here for a girl who could save me from becoming the upstate townie that was my birthright to be. In an alternative timeline, I'm probably an English teacher at a high school in the Finger Lakes, maybe married, maybe not, spending my autumn Sundays watching the Buffalo Bills. In this timeline, I spent all of my 20s, and not just the first 3 years, hanging around outside of gas stations and dive bars. There I am every Saturday night waiting for a friend to meet up. There my buddy and I are at the furthest corner of the bar, at Niagara Restaurant, or the Lumberyard, or Rockies. All holes in the wall we took over from our parents. We're waiting for a fight to break out that would be forgotten about the following morning. We're waiting for someone we don't know yet to walk through the doors. All of us, just waiting. My wife and I met at college at New Paltz and connected over music, specifically deep cuts of the Smashing Pumpkins' Pisces Iscariot, collection of outtakes and B-sides that the band could have discarded, but released so people like us could find each other in the drift. In 2007, she let me follow her to her hometown in Rockaway, where the waves awakened us each morning. We moved to Forest Hills in 2011, the same year we married, and in 2015, Forest Hills was where we brought our son for the first time. These days, my wife and I check a lot of the same boxes as many 40-somethings. We have careers and pensions. We pay our mortgage every month. Some nights our thoughts keep us awake. Family and friends who we wish would have stayed are long gone. Career opportunities and other versions of ourselves that may have yielded are starting to be forgotten too. We live at the cross currents of these possible paths and futures. Alternative timelines where we're somewhere else, maybe with someone else, maybe not, and still listening to the Smashing Pumpkins, but alone. There are whole timelines where I can't identify Beatles songs by their albums and don't know how tragic that is. Whole timelines where I don't know that Ringo Starr is, in fact, the best Beatle because of how his songs take us to the waters. Octopus's Garden, Yellow Submarine. How every one of us does, as Ringo sings, have all we need. My wife and I don't regret our life in Queens, where folks from across the tri-state area come so they can fly somewhere else. and where folks from across the world first arrive in New York City. In their comings and goings, they admire Queens for its history and its 21st century renovations, catching a glimpse of all its beauty that Fitzgerald once dismissed as a valley of ashes. We have stayed here long enough to see the beauty that grows from ashes. The flowers and trees now blooming, all the communities connected by the E, F, M, R, G, and 7 trains. Our son scripts train announcements while he glides by on his scooter, telling nearby folks to stand clear of the closing doors, or to mind the gaps, which makes us all think about the gaps none of us can see but often feel. I spend so many evenings mapping his movements so he avoids dangers. The girl who once tried to get an older boy to beat him up, the parents who neither smile nor sneer at him while he talks about trains, just waiting until he moves on and away from them. I spend so many evenings looking up at the skies. The flags above our playground ripple in the wind like lateen sails. We sometimes mistake the planes leaving LaGuardia for stars, and yet we choose to stay, year after year after year. I moved to Queens for a girl, and we have stayed here for a boy. Our son was diagnosed with autism when he was just 2 years old, which is to say only that he sees and engages the world differently. To some, that means he focuses on the wrong things or weird things. The pattern at the end of film credits, the background characters of PBS shows and Pixar movies. He wants to know these characters' names, if they're feeling sad. Where do they go? He always asks. My wife and I have to remember the elaborate stories we make up for them when they're not on screen. Our son insists on moving the background to the forefront, and he's kind enough to take us with him. This world is big enough for all of us, isn't it? Isn't perfect plural? One morning, a tree in our playground snapped and toppled over. It had shown no signs of distress, at least not to our inattentive eyes. Just one day, we woke to find it on its side, propped up by an unfortunately placed Volkswagen. Folks walking around it, annoyed at the inconvenience of it all. What time did it happen? Our son asked when we first saw it. Was it at 10 o'clock? A passerby smiled at his specificity, and before I could tell him I don't know what time it happened, he constantly teaches me all the things I'll never know. He seemed to answer his own question. It was late. We were sleeping. And immediately he connected the fallen tree to his dreams. Immediately the tree became a story of mysterious origins and an unceremonious end. He told me about how all the other trees gathered around it to say goodbye. Some of these trees were crying. Other trees, those that had toppled in the past, welcomed it to heaven. I remember his story later on when I watched some of the other neighborhood boys snap off branches to thwack each other with. My son scootering by them, the fastest thing in sight. He hits a bump and momentarily rides the air, seemingly carried by the wind. I think of the flying proa canoes my ancestors built to sail the Pacific. These canoes were reported to be about 2 or 3 times faster than Spanish ships. The Spanish colonizers first marveled at their speed, then felt threatened by this way of exploring the world based on connection rather than competition. Our son cruises by a group of boys a second time, and one of them makes like he's going to chase after him for laughs. Those cutting laughs, their own family inheritance, which is not as good as inheritance of stories, but who am I to say? Our son ignores their laughter, without giving them so much as a glance he veers away from them. These boys, who in another life could have been his friends. We've been coming to this playground for nearly a decade. We're constantly learning how to decide which horizons are worth pursuing. We were meant to find each other, like how one song leads to another so the music never ends, like how currents of the ocean merge and become one. We belong to each other in Queens. At our playground on Austin Street, tucked behind sleepy pre-war buildings, out of sight from the thoroughfare of Queens Boulevard. At Forest Park, where we've walked the overgrown rails of Queens' past, that is also now our own. We belong to each other in these stories we write for one another, watching planes depart from LaGuardia, or riding whatever bus or train our son wishes to explore. Every day we venture out into the world, if only so we can return home to each other. We follow the blinking lights of high-rises our ancestors would think of as stars. To us, each of them is.
Thank you so much. What a gorgeous set of stories. Another round of applause. Francisco Delgado. And to our two beautiful story coaches, Tim Lindner and Erika. I am so happy that I saved my why from the beginning. Believe me, I often ask myself, why do I produce? No, you tell it. I ask myself that a lot. But the answer tonight is all of you. Look at what started, right, as the blank page at the beginning of this month that so many people in this room contributed to, and all the wonderful Queen's history provided to us by Bob Singleton and Faye Yuen from Queen's Memory, Greater Story Historical Society. And it culminated in this incredible night of stories about the spaces that we share, and I'm so grateful to have found my place in Queens with all of you. I also can't forget, I'm getting so super nerdy with all this English stuff, but I can't forget the how, right? There's the 5 W's. It seemed like a good idea when I was writing out, but so we can't forget the how, right? Which is, I want to send a special thank you to Flushing Town Hall, because we received 2 2025 Queens grants, the Queens Community Arts Grant and the Go Queens Grant. So we're very excited about that. And so we're getting to the second set of prizes. I was the director for this set of stories that you just heard, but I am going to welcome Erika back up. Yep, I need a pointer. And we have a very special prize this evening. This is the Poets of Queens, their second anthology. So we have a special guest too. Leonard, do you want to stand up? So Leonard is the Poets of Queens. Another wonderful Queen student, and some of the storytellers are in here tonight. And also too, I'm very excited to announce that we are collaborating with Poets of Queens to curate and publish a new anthology, Prom Queens, which is going to be a collection of prom poems and prom stories written by Queens writers. Woo! And we're similar to the workshop that we have for the show tonight. We have Prom Queens workshop, storytelling and portrait training workshops. So if anybody's interested in taking a generative workshop and kind of inspiring your personal story, connecting with other ones over that, we have one on June 8th at the Astoria Bookshop and June 21st at the Queens Public Library, where you have the My Place workshop. And there's some flyers on I'm going to call it the bar. There's some flyers on the bar. And there's also a call for submissions there, so if you want to learn more about the anthology. But we're going to give some of the Poets of Queens, this is their second anthology, away tonight. So I'm going to hand you the prizes and should be handing them out. We have 3 anthologies and then the bag itself that they came in. Yeah. So fight over what you get, I guess. And we'll give Erika that. We all like to take power where we can, so I'll give Erika the power of what you get. Take a walk with me. What does Ari and their dad call out when they see a lone pigeon?
Oh,
Oh.
Little Joe.
Yep, there you go. Yeah, I'll give you you pick.
Okay.
But scan, don't leave
I'll
them
look
out.
over there.
Second question. What is the name of the vintage shop whose owner is bound to have good stories to tell?
Ooh, Love Day 31.
Love Day 31! And also in the house! Yeah, we also have Broadway Silk in the house. Yay! Support your small businesses. In Ashes and Stars, we learn that Ringo Starr is in fact the best Beatle because of how his songs take us to the waters. And you need to give both. What are the 2 songs given as examples? Oh, nice. I did a deep cut.
I know, but I was wondering.
Oh,
I'm hearing them. We got
Octopus's Garden and Yellow Submarine.
Is this for the bag? All right. And the second question: when the playground tree snapped and fell on its side, name one of the ways the other trees reacted in the sun's story. Yep, that was it. You said cried, right? Yeah. I decided to be easier with that one, just one of the names. So I would have taken the trees were crying, some toppled, the other trees that toppled the past welcomed it to heaven, some gathered around to say goodbye. Very beautiful story. Yeah. Great, thank you, Erika. Well, thank you once again. Because, finish eating that, Ellen, because you're next. You ready? Because I forbade the storytellers from playing and winning a prize, we have a very special prize for all of them. I'm going to welcome up Ellen Stedfeld to the stage to let us know what it is and to get them out. Sneak up there.
Hello, everyone. As you've heard, my name is Ellen. As you've probably also heard, I've been doodling tonight. During the rehearsal, I was literally doodling. And I also made the map. But during the show, I've been drawing everyone. We actually do have Kelly Jean. So I've drawn each of the storytellers, and then at the so this is the person whose story it is. These are some quotes from their story, and then at the bottom we have the person who is reading their story. So this was Mary's. You want to come over again? Wichuda? What type? I'm gonna
Yeah, go up there and then turn around and show the camera. I want a picture.
That's lovely. Look at that. So
I don't know if we want to cut other people, but I do have Bob here. Let's see. So then I guess next it was Ari. And here we have Francisco. So it has them. So, I mean, really, it's thanks to the storytellers that I'm able to draw as they're happening. And I was able to get some of the stories ahead of time, so it was helpful to be able to anticipate certain lines and say, okay, this is going to be the exciting part. They were like, what's the message in it? But it was very inspiring to read your work and then to hear it and see it in person, which is really what brought it together, was like you live being here and
Thank you so
responding to it all.
Oh, it looks so pretty. All right. Great. So I feel like you're just gonna keep us here all night. I do run on Duncan, like Ari. So, but we have one final present so that you can stay and mingle and have some red velvet cupcakes for my birthday. Baked by Chenda. Yes.
Do you like when people sing happy birthday to you?
I think I'm gonna like it now because I feel like Ellie's gonna start it.
What?
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kelly Jean. Happy birthday. 6-word memoir to the map. Ask all the questions. Good night.